So if you've been following the channel, then you know when I brought the MB home that it would not start and run. I did a couple tests and I've discovered at least two things that need to be fixed or corrected. And I want to talk about those in this episode of Rust to Resurrection. When I got home, I threw a battery charger on the battery and it came up to charge, or so I thought. I put a multimeter on it and it showed just over 6 volts, 6.14, I think, something like that. So I thought I had a full charge, and I went in and tried to start the Jeep, and I wasn't able to get any kind of a response to the starter, or the starter switch that was on the floor. But as I got to messing around with the switch, I began to wiggle it with my foot. And all of a sudden, I got a click. The starter engaged for just a split second. And I wiggled the switch a little bit more and it engaged again. But what turned out to be is even though the meter said that the battery was charged, apparently it didn't have enough charge in it to sustain the start cycle itself. Now the battery at this point I think was about 5 years old. It was installed at the end of the restoration, and it just, like I said in the first video, that it actually went through 2 summer-winter cycles and never got charged and never got run. I think the battery was just shot. So I went and bought a new battery. I stuck the battery in, and lo and behold, when I started to jiggle this, the Jeep turned over. And I actually got it to fire a couple times, but I couldn't sustain the start switch. I couldn't sustain the cycle of starting it. So I'm pretty sure that the switch had gone bad. So I bought a new switch. Now, initially I was going to go to one of the Jeep supply houses or the restoration supply houses. And I got to thinking, well, why do I need to do that? I wonder, these old floor starters, they go back generations. Why don't I just go down to my local parts stores and see if I had the ability to buy one there? Turns out the first parts store didn't have one. It was interesting that a lot of the younger guys didn't even know what the floor starter switch was. We've got three part supply houses in my town. So I went to the last one, which was Napa, and it was funny because it was the same thing. The 2 young guys behind the counter weren't sure what it was and weren't sure how to look it up. But anyway, we figured it out. We went through a lot of their older catalogs, and we found the switch, and they had one in stock. So we've got a new switch, and we're going to install that today. And we're going to see if we can't get this beast running. So let's go ahead and put this starter switch in. So the switch is going to live down here, right in that hole there. Now, the problem is that it looks real easy from here, but unfortunately, all of the connections are going to be way under here, and there's not a lot of room to work. So this ought to be fun. Now, one of the challenges I'm going to have right out of the box is this mounts underneath the floorboard, but the screws go in from the floorboard. It's really a 2-person job, and I don't have 2 people here right now, so I have to get this thing mounted up or positioned in from the bottom of the floorboard and get it held there somehow so that I can go in and put the screws in from the inside of the Jeep, find the threads, mount the washer and the nut to it, and then tighten them all up, all without help. Now the way this works is actually pretty simple. There actually is a single wire. It's the hot wire from the battery, and those wires go in to the switch on one side, and then it comes out the switch on the other side, so that when we compress or press the starter, it engages or closes the circuit between the two hot wires, and then that hot wire goes down to the starter itself, which is down here. So we're just closing a circuit with the switch. All right, so what I ultimately ended up doing was going down to the shop and grabbing these two welding magnets. They are pretty powerful enough that I was able to both hold the screws down against the floor pan, but also using the side of the magnets, I was able to hold the switch in the up position. So between the two of them, it secured it in place, and from the engine bay side, I was able to get my washer and my nut started. So that's how I did it. Oh, yes. Yes, one-handed. One-handed. You know the deal. Eighth turn, eighth turn, eighth turn. Oh, Lord. Done. That was almost an hour to get that done. Yeah, kind of fun. Let's see what happens. Contact. Guess we got something else going on. All right, I pulled the switch back out and decided I wanted to test the switch and make sure I bought a good one. So I use my multimeter, and I use the ohm section to check for resistance. And this is not the new switch. I've actually tested it, put it back into the Jeep, and it checked out fine. But we just did resistance across the terminals, and then I pushed the switch down, or made contact, did it again, and I had like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 ohms of resistance. I think that's what it was. And turns out that the switch was fine. So then I also checked the resistance across the terminals on the starter, thinking that my starter may have a short in it or gone bad, and that turned out to be good as well. So there was no short in the starter. So I've got two electrical components in the Jeep that are working as they're supposed to work. And at that point, with everything functioning the way it was supposed to, I was really getting a little confused, getting a little bit out of my league. So one of the great things about YouTube and the YouTube community is you begin to build and develop relationships with other YouTubers. So there are 3 YouTubers that I am friends with. Patrick Tipton over at Portrayal Press, Jeff Ford at Auto Restomod, and Jeff Holtz over at Just Drive It. Now, I got them on a text feed and was explaining to them my concern, my problem. And it was funny that each of them, or all 3 of them, came back with the same suggestions. It was kind of surreal a little bit. The 2 suggestions that mattered was all of them thought that I might have a stuck Bendix, so they suggested that I get a breaker bar and see if I can't turn the engine over, which I did, and the Bendix was indeed stuck. That's why it wasn't starting. And the thing that I notice most of is that when I push the starter, the hot lead or the terminal all the way from here, the battery to the switch, would get wicked hot. So we knew something was binding, or something that was causing the resistance in the system to overheat. So again, we put the breaker bar on, I pulled the motor over, and I felt it release. Now the engine will click over using that same starter that we put in. And the other common suggestion was that it might be a grounding problem. And if you look at any of these old Willys, these old MB Jeeps, there's something like 20 ground straps. There may even be more depending on what the Jeep was used for. So this Jeep, the way it was restored, does not have 20 ground straps. It's got one. And 6-volt systems are very finicky when it comes to grounding, and this I already knew. So I've got one ground strap, and I took it apart this morning and cleaned it up, sanded down all the terminals, and made again a nice tight connection. And lo and behold, the Jeep clicks over. It turns over. So I'm going to show you that real quickly here. This video is starting to get long, so I'm going to end it here, and then we'll come back with the next video where I'm going to get this thing running. That really is my goal. That is my plan. And Pat Tipton, who restores these old Jeeps and a bunch of other old military things as well. His channel's up on YouTube, Portrayal Press. And I was telling Pat, and we were talking, actually we talked on the phone, and Pat was telling me that before I do that, if the Jeep has been sitting for a long period of time, he wants me to go through and prime the entire fuel system. So I'm going to do that, and I'll take you through that process in the next video of me priming this system so that I've got fuel going all the way up to the carburetor. Before this grounding issue happened, or before this Bendix issue happened, I got the Jeep to start, but I couldn't keep it running because I couldn't get the fuel up into the carburetor long enough to keep it running to prime the entire system. So Pat gave me some suggestions on how to do that. So that'll be our next video, getting this thing primed and hopefully running. I really do want this thing to run. So thanks for watching, guys. Give it a like, share, subscribe if you haven't already, ring that bell so you get notified the next time I post a video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Contact number 2. I like that.